Okay, can you see this presentation now?
Yep, that's great.
Okay. The title of this presentation is the CSO reports on Ireland's SDGs. So essentially what we do in the CSO, our Sustainable Development Division was formed in 2017, as Alison said, and we started by looking at how we could produce the indicators which measures Ireland's targets towards achieving Agenda 2030. And our role in the CSO is to source and develop the SDG indicators. That's the data which measures the indicator. We then published the UNSDG data publications. So each goal had a separate publication. And we also coordinate data requests from custodian agencies such as the Food and Agricultural Organization or UN Population Fund or UN Development Programme and so on. And we provide corporate support to the Department of the Environment, Climate and Communications. So the Department of the Environment, or DEC for short, they are the policy department charged with reporting to the UN. So in this current VNR, which is being presented by Ireland to the UN, the DEC are presenting the report, but the data chapter is from our publications. So I will just give you a flavor of what's in these publications. So we have the 17 Sustainable Development Goals from the UN, and these 17 goals are measured by 169 targets. And in order to see if we are achieving these targets, there are 232 indicators or pieces of data which measure that target. So some targets might have 2 or 3 indicators measuring it. Other targets may only have 1 indicator measuring it. And behind these indicators, we break them down as much as possible into data tables with such as region, age, gender, social cohorts, such as things like socioeconomic groups, deciles, the richest 1/10 of the population versus the wealthiest 1/10 of the population, and so on, and family status and various things which are of interest to policymakers. So here's an example of no poverty goal 1. So one of the targets here is target 1.2. By 2030 to reduce at least by half the proportion of men, women and children living in poverty. So how do we measure this target? Well, with this target, there are 2 indicators: the proportion of the population living in poverty below the national poverty line, and also men, women and children of all ages. So that is where all these what we call disaggregation of tables comes in. So while we might be doing well overall, if we look at gender cohorts and various age groups, we might see the elderly in one particular target isn't doing so well, or it could be the young in another, and so on, or it could be migrants, and various different cohorts in the population might be suffering. So that's why our role in the CSO is to break down the data as much as possible. And this is in line with the underlying theme of the UN SDGs, which is leave no one behind. So it's not just looking at the target from a national level. We have to look at the breakdown and what particular groups are being affected. Now, here's an example. We're looking at the heritage and communities and cities and towns. So goal 11 here is sustainable cities and communities. And here we produce an infographic for every single publication. So for goal 11, we have a geospatial aspect to it. So this is looking at the proportion of the population where the nearest public transport stop has low frequency daily services. So you can see it's predominantly in the border counties, the west and the western seaboard here. So logically as well, the population here is low, so you wouldn't expect the frequency of public transport, like for instance you'd have in Dublin or the counties in Leinster or here around Limerick and the Cork region. Also, we look at heritage, so this will be Alison's area, and government allocated spending in 2022. Now, this doesn't include private, this is simply from the budget. So we've published the data we have at the moment, but we will be doing a second iteration of these publications next year, and hopefully we will have more detailed breakdown of spending from other sources. And we also look SDG 1171, which is the percentage of spaces in each city, or the per person for open spaces such as public parks, playgrounds, and so on. We also look at municipal waste and how much waste is generated. And then we look at crime, recorded crime. So here's a list of all the indicators in goal 11. Now, I won't go down through these. You can read them in your own time. And here's a link to goal 11 publication. But I'll go through some of the other publications we produce as well. So what we do is from goals 1 to 17, we produce an infographic just like goal 11 to highlight what the main themes of the publication are. And this is just to give the reader an overview of the type of content in each publication. And then you can go into the publication and explore in detail. So again, we have a strong focus on the geospatial aspect. So every infographic will carry a map to show that we break the data down where possible into a geospatial aspect. So these are goals 1 to 6. And similarly here we have goals 7 to 12. And then the last 5 goals here is goal 13 to 17. And again, we highlight the main kind of features or the data presented in the publication. And the SDG publications are available here. So Alison will send around this presentation and you can go into the website and look. So I will just give a very brief demo here. So just to show, if you can see my screen here now. So with the link, you will be able to see we have here on the SDG page of the CSO website, we have all goal 1 to 17 all published here. So if you click on any of them, so for instance, goal 17, partnership for the goals, which we just published last month. And again, we can see the infographic here highlighting the main features. And every publication here has a table of contents. So in this table of contents, you will see what the indicators are for this particular goal. So again, finance, we look at total government revenue and proportion of domestic budget and so on. And this is what actually one of the largest, it and goal 3, which is health and well-being, are the 2 largest publications. So this is 20, I think it's 25 or so indicators in it, whereas goal 7, which is affordable and clean energy, only has, I think it's 7 indicators with it. So the number of indicators varies from goals depending on what it's trying to measure. So if whichever particular indicator you're interested in, you can just go in and click on it, or you can simply go down through the chapters here and just look at how the data is broken down. So here we have the Excel tables, so you can click on these, and if you want to download the table, you just click here and it downloads the data for you. And we have some graphs here, and again, tables, you just click on the table and you can download the data. So we provide the data where possible in time series, and we also provide the geospatial aspect if that's available. And a few info bytes just to give the headline figure associated with each indicator. And this is our overseas development assistance. So we can see the countries where we give aid to and which countries receive the most aid and so on. So that's an overview very quickly of what we do. And just similarly, goal 11, I had presented earlier. So just goal 11 is the same thing. We have the table of contents, and then you can click on any of these or just go down through the chapter. And just to say, in every publication, there is an overview chapter from the policy perspective. So in this case, the policy department would be the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage. And then the other chapters deal with the data behind each of the indicators. And again, the tables are designed in a user-friendly manner. So you simply click here and you download the table. So everything is designed to make it as easy as possible for the user. And also, if we have reports, for instance, here, the housing and homelessness, you can click on these links here and it takes you into the detailed report. So in this case, the Department of Housing published detailed monthly figures for the homeless, and any of these reports, you can get the detail behind the data. So we publish the headline data that's required for the report, but if the reader or a researcher is doing more in-depth analysis, they can go in and read how the data is compiled and the criteria behind the data. And also if there's policy aspects to the data, they can read that in the original report. So our focus here is to provide the data that the UN requires. That's the headline data, but we also accommodate the researcher in terms of looking at the data. And again, this is the homeless data produced at a particular time, but we also, by linking here, then the reader can see the latest data that's published. So they don't have to wait until we publish the next iteration of the reports next year. So that's a brief flavor. So if anybody has any questions.